In this video, we're going to take a look at Webinarjam's pricing and functionality and see how that compares to other popular solutions like Zoom Webinar and GotoWebinar. Hi everyone, it's Kevin from Solopreneur, and I help entrepreneurs like you automate your marketing and sales. And if you're watching this video, you already know about the power of webinars, and I don't need to talk about why webinars are one of the hottest things in marketing today, especially in digital marketing. But choosing a webinar platform can be a daunting decision, and there are dozens and dozens of solution providers. But if you're watching this video, then you clearly are evaluating Webinarjam, and what I want to do here is talk about Webinarjam and compare it against Zoom Webinar and GotoWebinar to give you a bit of a reference point. So let's jump right in. So right off the bat, Webinarjam has 3 plans: basic, professional, and enterprise, and they're all annual plans. There aren't any monthly plans. However, there is a 30-day risk-free money-back guarantee, and I can give you a 14-day trial, which I'll show you how to get later in the video, so keep watching. Also, if you're finding this video helpful, drop me a like, consider subscribing to the channel, really helps me out. But let's get back into it. So there are 3 plans: basic, professional, and enterprise. And the real difference here is obviously the number of attendees and some core functionalities. And I'll just really quickly explain these functionalities. So the always on live room is something like a physical meeting room where you can have this room that people can just hop in and out of. It's just a webinar that's constantly running. And so that functionality is included in the professional and up. The panic button is a really cool functionality where it can just refresh the webinar. So if whatever reason things are glitching or whatnot, it just reboots the entire webinar, puts everyone back into the webinar room automatically. It's like a fail-safe button. Pretty cool. And finally, the control panel lets you have administrators who can also have a back-end view, and they're not actually one of the presenters, so they get access to data and they can kind of administrate your webinar and chat with people and share handouts and things of that nature. So you can see more about it here. Your staff can manage the event while you focus on the presentation. That's basically what it is. Now, when it comes to choosing the right plan, I would say it really depends on your use case. The always on room and the panic buttons are nice to haves in the sense that it's a convenience to have the always on room, but obviously you can spin up a webinar anytime. And if you're using it for like a meeting internally with your team, you're probably better off using a video conferencing solution anyways. A webinar is probably overkill for that. And the panic button is a nice to have, but absolutely it's not required. But as you do get up in attendees, it's a nice fail safe, if you really can't have things go wrong. And finally, the control room. That is obviously for you're doing something at an enterprise level, and you absolutely, at that point, if you have 5,000 attendees in your webinars, you absolutely have employees. So it's relevant to that audience, I think. And if you're just a solo founder or you have a couple of people, you can get by certainly without the control room, and one of your other hosts can do some of the administration. So you don't need this functionality. So these 3 features are not really crippling these other plans. They're just add-ons that grow with you. And so that's one of the things I like. There are no real functionalities like paid webinars or integrations or things that are really critical that are just locked away. These 2, like I said, are nice to haves. And this one is really only applicable once you get to a certain scale. And at that point, you're likely not even concerned about this price. Basically, the pricing is straightforward. There are no hidden fees. What you see is what you get, and you can get started for $4.99. But to give you a reference point, let's talk about 2 other webinar platforms you might be considering. Let's start with Zoom. So looking at the pricing here for Zoom Events and Webinar, as it's called, for 500 attendees, it's $690. Now, Webinarjam is $500. Yeah, it's more, but it's not astronomically more. However, Zoom is a little tricky here. Let me show you why that is. Because the minute you go to 1,000 attendees, your price jumps up to $3,400 a year. Webinarjam would cost you $699 for double the number of attendees. So really, this 500 right here is just a trick to get you in the door. But once they get you in the door, it's 5 times the price to double your attendees, which is madness. In contrast, it's only $200 more to quadruple your attendees. Doesn't even make any sense how bad the pricing is for Zoom. So that is the first problem with Zoom. It is insanely expensive. The other thing is it just lacks a lot of functionality to run a webinar. So it doesn't have fully customizable registration pages. It doesn't have countdown timers and upsell offers. It doesn't have SMS notifications if you need that. So it doesn't have all of the functionality as well. And it's astronomically more expensive once you get to any sort of scale. And depending on what you're doing, you may never reach 1,000 attendees, but you certainly don't want to be in a position where if you do get to that scale, you're sort of locked in for $3,400 a year, or you now have to get another system. And you can see here, if you switch to monthly, it gets even worse. It's $340 a month. So don't get me wrong, Zoom is absolutely the best video conferencing solution right now. That's why everyone uses it. But that doesn't quite extend to its webinar functionality. It's just not where it needs to be yet. Now, jumping over to GoToWebinar. This is a product that's been around for a very, very long time. It's certainly one of the original webinar tools on the internet, and it has functionality that matches pretty much everything that Webinarjam can do. Where it falls apart simply is the pricing. So we can see here we're back on annual billing, and for 500 participants, we're looking at $2,388 for 500 participants. Again, $499 versus $2,088. We're talking almost 5 times the price. Then when we get to 1,000 participants, we're talking about $5,148 billed annually. Whereas it's $699 for double the number of participants with Webinarjam. And so Webinarjam really is the best value webinar platform. It is the cheapest solution for the functionality you get. Even if we look at another one like BigMarker, you can see here $159 for 500 attendees, which is $1,908, which is almost 4 times the price. And then here we go again. You get to 1,000 attendees, which is half of the 2,000 Webinarjam provides, and it's $3,500 when you're getting $699 for double the number of attendees. So I can go through a few other solutions, and there are smaller players in the space as well, but basically Webinarjam is a tremendous value for the price and the functionality. Now, I did promise you that I would show you how to get a 14-day trial, so let me do that now. So what you want to do is click the link in the description below, and it will take you to this page right here. Then you'll see that you'll now have the start your trial button. You click on that and select your 14-day trial plan, and you can start with whichever one you want, and just click this button and go through the sign up process, and you'll get 14 days for $1, and you can still cancel after 30 days and you get a full money back guarantee. So you almost get a 30-day trial in a sense, which is ultimately the best way to decide what's going to work for you. So I highly recommend you give the trial a shot. Even try some of the other solutions you're evaluating. Most of these solutions have trials, so I really recommend you do that before making an annual commitment especially. So hopefully that's helped you evaluate Webinarjam and see why it's one of the best value products versus other popular solutions in the market. If you found this video helpful, like I said, drop a like, consider subscribing to the channel. I have a ton of other Webinarjam content here as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.